video, I'm going to talk about Java comments, but in particular, a specific kind of comment called a Java doc. So I'm going to see the three different kinds of Java comments, and then also learn how Eclipse can help make a Java doc comment. So there's something called inline comments, 2 slashes, and they allow you to add comments sort of easily in different places in the code. They're typically either done as single line or added to the end of some other Java statement. Set up a counting variable. I will caution that you want to be a little careful not to be too obvious in your comment. So, for example, at a certain point, seeing int count equals 1, everyone sort of knows that's basically, setting up something that's going to count something, and you don't need to have this redundant comment at the end. You want to save comments for something that's a little more insightful or shows a little more structure. So one thing you do with single line comments is if you're creating a method, sometimes it's good to set up like car values. You can kind of outline what you're doing in the method. Compute costs, and then report on costs, and then maybe you add code, in each one of these sections. But you're kind of using these as a little bit of a reminder of what the overall path is in the method. Along with these single line comments, there are multi-line comments, and here Eclipse is actually helping a little bit to keep a consistent structure. Everything between here and here is a comment, and these are not necessary, the additional asterisks there, but they're nice to kind of create a little decorated border so people know that it's a multi-line comment. So most people keep those in there, and you line them up like this. So again, if you have something larger to say, that's kind of where that would go. All right, so let's get rid of that stuff here. A third way between those single line and multi-line comments is called a Java doc, and it's basically a specialized multi-line comment. But basically it has things inside it that can get turned into nice documentation automatically. So a Java doc looks something like this. I'm going to select this class line and try to add a Java doc above it. And in Eclipse, there's hotkeys you can do. So I'm going to do that. And notice it starts off with an extra asterisk on the first line showing that it's a Java doc, but it looks like a multi-line comment otherwise. But inside it, there are these tags, and these tags can get read by the Java doc system and to help it understand what you're trying to say in there. So typically for a class, you might say this class combines values in different ways, or really I say this class has methods to combine values in different ways. And notice there's some basic punctuation. I'm making it look like English sentences, capitalized, end with a period, and so on. And then there's this author tag that says who wrote the code, and there's other tags as well. Now, the methods Java docs are a little more interesting, and they're really helpful when you're learning someone else's code to have these more formal Java docs in there. So for example, you can describe at param what the parameters are, what the return value is, and so on. And so here's an example Java doc. It comes from like a real system, right? So there is a parameter of this method, string text, and here it says at param, give the name of the variable, the name of the parameter, and there's some description of what that is, like what you're supposed to send into the method, so people kind of know what's going on. Just text doesn't say that much basically. So here's a little additional description, and notice there's like a special case. If it's this special value, then you don't do something. There's a general description up above. And because this is a void method, there is no return type. So let's write a sort of just a funny method that doesn't really do anything, except it's a little confusing, so we're going to want to describe what it does. basically, if this first parameter is positive, we're going to return the sum of these. Otherwise, we're going to return the difference of them. So a little chance to practice our if statements here as well. So if value 1 is positive, so it's greater than 0, then we want to return the sum of those two things, value 1 plus value 2. Else, otherwise, if it was not positive, if it's 0 or negative, we're going to subtract them. Now notice here also I have returns, 2 returns, and so either one of those can be activated, but as soon as it hits that one, it's done with the method, or if it hits this one, it's done with the method. And so that's all there is in this method. Okay, so we want to comment this, so I'm going to put my cursor on that first line and do the Java doc. And notice the cool thing is if you wait till after you've sort of created the method, it knows these parameters and will sort of fill it all in for you. Now there isn't anything particularly special here about these, so I'm just going to say it's an integer value. By saying something, it's clear I actually have thought about it. I could, sometimes you're going to say like a value greater than 0 if that's what's required for the method to work correctly. But in this case, it's pretty generic. And here, I'm going to say a little bit about what this does. This method returns the sum of the values if value 1 is positive, otherwise it returns the difference. And there's this return, and again, you're trying to say I'm not going to say return an int, because we already can tell that it returns an int here, right? I'm going to say return the sum or difference of the parameters. I'm just trying to say something a little bit more concise here than I said up here. It's a little redundant, but that's okay. Okay, so let's look at this again. I made a Java doc for the class that has an author tag, and there's some date stuff and version and things like that you can put in there as well. We're typically just having the author in there. And then for a method, the things you need to have a general description, and then you need for each parameter have a parameter tag saying something about either what the meaning of that thing is or some limitations on it. And then if it has a non-void return type, you need to say something about what value is returned out of this thing. Now what you can do with this is I'm going to go up to my Eclipse menu project, and there's a generate Java doc, and it says where do you want to generate it for, and sometimes you have to go find it, but it's not too bad. I need to save it, and it's doing some stuff, and if I look down in my project, there's now a doc folder, and there's a HTML page for this combiner class that has the Java doc. And if I look at it, it now looks like a real like a real thing. Like all of a sudden this looks pretty formal and official. That's kind of cool. It says here's this combined together, and notice the description shows up here, and there's some details on it, so you can see the parameters and the return type. But this is why it's important to have these things all filled in, so there's some meaningful information for people looking at this thing. But I think it's pretty cool that there's like, it takes this kind of rough looking text, in your editor and makes this nice web page, and you can actually click around these typically and kind of explore a larger system this way. Okay, so that's it for the basics of commenting, and in particular the Java doc. But Java docs are important to use. Most workplaces require it, and most programmers use them.